Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dark Domain. Now I know a lot of you these video to sleep. So before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea. If everyone could leave a comment. To let me know where you are listening in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episode. Right, let's get comfy and relaxed and let's. First story is leaving my sister after she showed up with her boyfriend. I, 20F, organized a day out with my sister, 21F. For simplicity I'll call her Anna. We agreed to go for brunch to start with and then do some shopping, get our nails done and maybe finish off with a film if there was anything worth seeing. All was fine and I was really looking forward to spending some time with her. Jump forward to the day and I arrive at the place first and grab a table. Anna arrives a few minutes later but I'm shocked to see she's brought her boyfriend, 23M, with her. A little bit of background, Anna tends to only date guys for a couple of months before getting bored with them and she'd only been seeing this guy for about 3 weeks at this point. I try to hide my surprise and be civil and we order food. When he leaves to go to the toilet, I ask my sister why she's brought him along since we already agreed we're going to be doing typical sisterly things and it doesn't really suit him. She said she didn't want him to feel left out, whatever that means. I said okay, and that I assumed he'd be paying for his own food. She tells me no, it's your turn, we take turns paying whenever we meet up. I was completely shocked that she expected me to pay for his food as well. I think she could tell so she said that she'd cover his order. Honestly the whole thing really annoyed me and I didn't like the idea of going round stores, trying clothes on etc. with this guy following along. So after we paid the bill and were leaving the restaurant I made some excuses and left. Now my sister is messaging me asking what happened and I don't know what to say. Second story is playing a role exposing my in-laws' terrible financial planning. My wife and I have been planning to build a long-term home for our growing family. We make a good living but are fairly conservative when it comes to spending capital, and therefore have tried our best to stick to a budget that gets us what we want but also doesn't leave us house poor and unable to save and enjoy our hobbies. My wife is very close to one side of her grandparents and has often talked about the plans we're drawing up with our builder. Grandfather was a contractor / owned a decent-sized commercial construction business, so it made sense to run our plans by them. Rate hikes and other factors led us to deciding to downgrade a substantial portion of the house in our plans. Which said grandfather noticed when we sent him the final layout we were preparing to commit to. To our surprise, we've never asked for any money from any family member in the past. My wife informed me that they wanted to formally pass along some portion of what they believed / planned would be our inheritance to fund our house and allow us to commit to the full plans, an extremely generous amount of money. Informing my wife's parents of the developments things got strange, rather than seem happy for us they seemed somewhat distant. The following day my wife received a text from her mom that she urgently needed to talk one-on-one about our house situation. My wife's mother informed her that her and her father had not planned well for their retirement. Keeping up with the Joneses, going on vacation and other things meant they hadn't saved much in their 401k and were in a fair amount of debt. They planned that their inheritance would be the backbone of their retirement and a way to pay off the debts. They in the past informed them in such discussions that they would redistribute money to their kids, my wife, themselves in the future. The ask from her mom was that we politely decline the offer and tell her grandparents that we just save for the addition sometime down the line. Later, my in-laws would try and help pass something along if they could. Later that week meeting with her grandparents they were upset when we refused the money. When my wife walked away with her grandma to look at something in the garage her grandfather pried me for why we were pushing back, insisting that we would be receiving this money anyway in the future and they would rather see the fruits of it while they were still alive. I cracked and at that point basically said that her parents preferred if they managed the money that was received later down the line. Not long after the visit my wife got an extremely angry call from her mom asking why we had told them they were the reason for us not accepting the money. My wife broke down. Never have heard her parents yell at anyone let alone her. I admitted to the limited information I told her grandpa and now for the last couple weeks she's been extremely distant. Her parents haven't spoken to us in the same amount of time. Third story is not supporting my husband quitting his business to become a doctor. My husband, 28M, and I, 27F, have 2 young children, 2 and 1. Recently, his father was diagnosed with cancer, and it's been incredibly hard on him. Not long after, his mom had to have stents placed in her heart. In the past 3 weeks alone, he's taken them to the ER at least 5 times. It's been a lot, and I truly do understand how overwhelming and emotional that is. I've tried to be as supportive as I can, stepping up with the kids and continuing to work full-time to keep things stable at home. About 2 weeks ago, everything kind of blew up. He told me he wants to dissolve his real estate business and go back to school to become a doctor. His reasoning is that he wouldn't be able to run the business while also committing to school full-time. The part that's been really hard for me is that I've supported him building this business for the past 4 years. I worked full-time, raised our newborns and toddler, and held everything together at home while he was able to focus fully on growing the business. It wasn't easy, but now it's finally at a point where it's successful and can comfortably support our family. And now he wants to walk away from all of that. I completely understand where this is coming from emotionally. Watching your parents go through serious health issues can change your perspective on everything. But at the same time, this decision doesn't just affect him. It affects me and our kids too. Going back to school to become a doctor is a long, demanding, and expensive path, and his plan is to fully step away from the business while I continue working full-time, take care of the house, and raise our children. When I pushed back, things escalated. I told him I felt like he was being selfish and not thinking about how this would impact our family. Since then, he's basically shut down. He hasn't been speaking to me for the past 2 weeks. He stopped by this weekend to spend some time with the kids, but he's been staying at his parents' house in the meantime. I feel really torn. I want to support him, especially given everything he's going through with his family. But I also feel overwhelmed, hurt, and honestly a little abandoned. It feels like I'm being asked to carry everything again, just when things were finally becoming stable. AITA for not supporting my husband's goals. 4th story is refusing to mow the lawn at my ex-wife's house. Throwaway account. And yes, you are reading that title correctly. Some backstory: my ex-wife, 29F, and I, 33M, got a divorce last year, but we are still in contact because we share a 2-year-old daughter. She and our daughter currently live at one of her parents' house, which has HOA to mow the lawn. However, her parents own another property in a town that is closer to where I live, and she wants me to cut the grass over there. Previously, when we were still married, I would mow the front yard of that house, which is not too large. But they do not have a lawn mower, and I do not own a pickup truck. So every time, I would have to bring a weed whacker in the back of my SUV to cut that small patch of grass. We are no longer married anymore, so I don't think it would make sense for me to continue doing this. My ex-wife disagrees. For some reason, she believes that it's still my duty as the father to cut the grass, for free, at a house that our child doesn't even live at. I told her no, I'm not cutting your grass anymore, please pay someone else to do it. Because she's currently busy taking care of our daughter, she believes that I still owe it to her to cut the grass. I still visit on weekends, buy stuff, and provide weekly funds to support them. Now that I told her no, she is immaturely ignoring all my texts, usually asking her how our child is doing. Granted, I can still visit my daughter at any time, I do not feel comfortable going somewhere that I'm not welcomed. AITA for refusing to cut her grass. 5th story is giving my niece a much better life than her step-siblings. I 40F have been very lucky and joined a tech startup very early that turned out to be a unicorn. It was sold several years ago, and while I'm no billionaire, it's allowed me to live a very comfortable life. I have a small close-knit family and am happy to share with my good fortune with them. I have an older brother Isaac, 50M, who has a daughter Grace, 14F, with an ex-partner. Grace lives most of the time with her mom Rebecca but spends the weekends and half of the summer with her dad. I'm especially close with Grace since I only have sons and they love their cousin and vice versa. Grace would frequently babysit and be a mother's helper, make bottles, burp the baby, help in the kitchen etc., when she was younger. Even before my startup's acquisition, my husband and I made enough that we paid for her private school, $60K a year, and would take her on trips to Disneyland and vacations with us, usually skiing in the spring and then a couple of weeks in Mexico/Hawaii in the summer. But when our lifestyle upgraded, so did hers. We set up a trust fund for her, enough for college/masters/PhD and a down payment on a house in the Bay. We bought vacation homes and took several international vacations a year on business class. Her parents have been nothing but supportive and very grateful. Now the problem is around 5 years ago Rebecca met George, who had 2 kids who he has 50-50 custody of, Caroline, F16, and Christian, M13. Both Rebecca and George work as servers and have a hard time making ends meet. They recently got married and moved in together, and Caroline and George are starting to get upset and jealous that their stepsister lives such a better life. They go to public school, go to Disney once a year if they are lucky, and maybe a trip to Vegas or to visit their grandma in Florida in the summer. This upset George and has led to fights with Rebecca. The kids are fighting too. Rebecca brought this up to me, hesitantly, but she said that she promised George she'd at least ask me to at least pay for private school to keep things even, and try to make things even between the kids with gifts and trips. Rebecca is on my side, and said she knows it's not my responsibility at all, but she promised George she'd at least talk to me, and he said I'd be pretty cold/jerk, though I think he used stronger language knowing him, to treat siblings so differently. But my husband and I disagree. I barely know those kids. Ida.